All right, welcome back to another episode of the Career Coaches Podcast. Today, I have a great friend of mine, Mr. Josh Bob. Yes, that's you, Josh. And I want to give you an intro about Josh. Josh is a career coach. He's built a multiple six-figure career coaching business. And what I love about Josh is he doesn't have Google or Amazon or McKinsey on his resume. He doesn't have 100,000 followers. And yet, I know for a lot of watchers, you believe that you need either those big logo brands or those hundreds of thousands of followers to build a successful career coaching business. And that is not true. And so I actually super excited to dive deep into Josh because I've always said that the number one marketing engine in your business is actually client success. And so those logos or those followers are secondary to you actually delivering your clients' results. And Josh has over 250 clients placed. It's real numbers, real stories, is individuals who he's worked with and placed. And I've said this to Josh many times. I have worked with hundreds of career coaches, and I think Josh by far is one of the best career coaches, the ones that works with the clients and gets them to break limiting beliefs and get them to ultimately get amazing results. So Josh, welcome, man. How are you?
I'm great, Danny. It's fantastic to be here with you, here in the virtual world. That was a fantastic intro. I'm going to need you to write that down and send it to my wife just to remind her of how great I am on Father's Day.
I don't know if you knew this, but I've already sent her that in a note.
That does explain breakfast this morning.
Yeah. She should have got it in the mail. I know that you like words of affirmation, and so we went ahead and did that already. Yeah.
Thank you. It's awesome to hang with you. Sure, I would love to have had Google on my resume, but that didn't work out. And I'm still here, still kicking, and looking forward to talking with you about what it takes to be a career coach when you can't just lean on the experience that you had in your working experience.
So before we get into that, I want to ask you a question. So you've been in tech for over 20 years, VP, director, founder. At what point did you realize that you actually wanted to actually go into coaching versus continuing your corporate journey?
That's a great question. So in my original career, if you will, after being a founder, I discovered product management, felt like I was really good at it, definitely enjoyed it. Spent 10 years or so as a product manager, but I wasn't advancing as far as I wanted to be. I was head of product, but I just couldn't get to that next level. And so I worked with a coach of my own to figure out why. And what we discovered was that there's sort of different things that you do in every function. For me, there was a limiting, not belief, but fact that I just wasn't great at product vision. And so what I did was focused on, if you take product vision out of product management, what's left? And we focused on customer success. On my way out the door, after having landed a great head of customer success role as a VP at a smaller startup, the coach said to me, "Hey, listen, you shouldn't think about this now, but just keep it in your back pocket. You've got the way of thinking about things that a great coach needs. You've got the empathy. So if you ever want to think about coaching, come back to me and let's talk." So I was at the startup for 2.5 years. Eventually, as many startups do, it shut down and was still hanging out in the back of my brain. So I went back to him and we spoke, and that was kind of the beginning of my coaching journey.
You mentioned something really interesting, that you've been on the other side of the coaching relationship, right? That's kind of how it kind of all started.
Multiple times.
What did that experience teach you or help you now that you are the one coaching others?
Yeah. So I've had 2 coaches formally as career coaches, and they both demonstrated one thing in particular, which is empathy. I've been big on empathy for a long time. I think my headline used to say lead with empathy. I still lead with empathy because it's not in my headline, doesn't mean anything. The idea of, let me help this person where they need help, as opposed to everybody has to fit in the box that I think of. That's a starting point for me. Understanding where somebody comes from, understanding who they are as a human. I had a kickoff call with a new client yesterday. I've got another one today. They both start the same way. I want to get to know you as a human because we're going to spend a whole bunch of time together. So tell me a little about you, not about the job seeker you.
That's interesting. It's really awesome because you've been in their shoes. And so then you have the empathy to understand like this, maybe the skepticism that they might have when they're on a call, or the lack of the emotional roller coaster that they would go through when they are super excited to get started, but 2, 3 weeks later, maybe they're not getting the job already or the interview already. And so their motivation goes down. And so you have the empathy to say, hey, I understand it feels like we're not making any progress, but trust me on this, like those networking messages will turn into interviews or those interviews will turn into offer. And so you have that insight in it. It's interesting because generally I find that we shop like we sell. And so if you've never invested in a career coach, it sometimes can be very difficult in the beginning stages of your career coaching business to sell high ticket because you've never invested that money yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll take that a step further.
Yeah.
You know, firsthand, I invested in a business coach for myself when I wanted to run a business
Yep.
of being a career coach because I'd run businesses before, but not like this. And certainly not successfully or as successfully. And so there's an extra layer of I needed to understand what I didn't understand. I needed to talk to somebody when I needed a career coach. I needed to talk to somebody who knew careers better than I did. And when I wanted to start a business, I needed to talk to somebody who knew building a career coaching business better than I did.
Yeah. I started the podcast talking about how you don't have a famous firm behind your name. You don't have a viral book or a massive following. You were able to grow roughly to about 22,000 followers on LinkedIn, but you weren't there a couple of months ago, or not months ago for sure, but a couple of years ago when you were kind of starting your coaching business. And last year, you had one of the best years ever in your business. How do you explain to people who think that they need those things to be successful?
It's a great question. Number one, it helps certainly that I started off with a pretty sizable network. So when I started posting, there was kind of a natural following, even if they weren't looking at me as a coach. So there's some help there, but for the most part, everything that I do from here and from here. There's curiosity, there's empathy, and there's a desire to learn and improve. With those three things in mind, everything that I do is focused on how can I get better. And so when I wanted to grow my following, I said, okay, I can write my own stuff. I was writing my own stuff. Let me see what else is out there. And when I wanted to do resumes, I said, okay, let me see what other people's resumes look like. Let me learn from that. Let me understand and let me talk to recruiters. That's been a big thing for me is understanding. I don't want to call it the other side, but understanding the other side to some extent in order to say, listen, you can go talk to those guys, but you can also talk directly to somebody who has seen for themselves what a recruiter actually wants and heard from the recruiter's mouth what they are actually looking for.
I think that's a pattern. I'm really big into pattern recognition and really understanding what's the pattern so we can make repeatable process. So we can create systems so that it becomes more repeatable and more predictable. Right? And I think that's a pattern that I continue to notice time and time again is that you go and learn and you go and try to learn and you did like life's only shortcut is education. And education doesn't mean school. It means learning for someone who's been there, done that, right? And so because we can go in school for 12 years, we can learn 2,000 years of history and failures and wins, and there where we can get a little bit faster. And for you, I noticed like you want to learn resumes, you go directly to the source, resume writers, recruiters. You want to learn business coaching, you go hire a business coach. You want to get better at your career, go hire a career coach. And I think that is a pattern that I notice with you, which is awesome. So I just give you so much kudos for that. But let me move and pivot to another pattern that I found when I was getting ready for this episode. So before I hit record, I was telling you, and I'll give you guys a little bit more background, that I'm going to try something new this episode. And I love listening to podcasts. I have 2 podcasts. Technically, I have a secret podcast for my grandkids, so 2.5 podcasts. And I love listening. And one of my favorite podcasts right now is Diary of the CEO. And I think that what makes that podcast such a good podcast and one of the top downloaded podcasts in the world, usually is in the top 3, is that Stephen Burnett, the host, does a really good job with the researching before the client. So I said, okay, well, let me get ready for this interview in a different way and spend more time than I usually do. And I went and spent a lot of time reading your client testimonials because we knew we were going to focus on client success. And I noticed a pattern. Okay.
Boy,
Okay. You ready for this?
you made me very nervous right now.
The pattern wasn't that they said, oh, Josh made the perfect resume. And it wasn't like Josh is the perfect at interview prep. It wasn't about LinkedIn. It was about stories. So let me read you a testimonial that stood out to me by Becky H., who's a senior customer success manager. Josh has a rare talent for connecting the dots between resume, LinkedIn, interviewing, narrative. He doesn't just polish your story, he helps you own it. His advice is always actionable. His feedback is sharp and supportive, and his insights into the PM job market is second to none. Let me go another one. The story brainstorming process alone unlocked metrics I never thought I could claim. When the right opportunity landed, I had my pitch ready, questions prepared, outcomes quantified, nothing left to chance. That was by Benjamin. Josh helped me shift my focus from just activities to actual results, and from my past experience to the future roles I want. I can keep going on and on and on, but the whole thing is that you're able to help people communicate better stories. Let's dive into that, Josh.
Okay. Happy to. So I do want to say one thing. Every one of those testimonials is taken not like paragraph by paragraph, but sentence by sentence, taken from a conversation that I have had with the person using their own real words. So every one of those things is something they said and then put in writing. From my perspective, stories are everything. Stories are what connect us as humans. Stories are what connect I don't want to overstate it, like the fabric of the universe, but like they are what allow us to relate to each other, because they're not only a transference of information and a transference of fact, but they're a transference of emotion between two people. So I tell you the story of Jaws and you get scared because there's music? No, but because the storytelling has allowed you to feel real danger. And so when somebody in my program wants to tell a story about the experience they've had, I want them transferring the emotions of that story to the listener, to the interviewer. And what that means to me is every single time they're going to create drama with the problem statement. The drama is what was at risk. Because if you don't have anything at risk, then the story is functionally useless, right? Like I was riding my bike and a car was coming, but it was 4,000 feet that way. And I very easily got onto the sidewalk. Meh. Like there's got to be that risk, not necessarily personal, but certainly to the company, because you're trying to audition for doing something for the company. And then those actions come through and they tell the story of moving from risk to outcome through your specific actions. And when you get to the outcome, there is a palpable sense of relief for the person listening who feels a little bit lighter that you made it. Everything's okay. That's storytelling in a nutshell. And getting somebody to that level of storytelling is a process, because most people don't necessarily come that way. But if you do, or even if you get there, when you get there, it makes the interview so much more powerful, because you're telling the story of being able to accomplish that problem solving for the interviewer at a new level.
What's interesting about this, Josh, and even more than ever, is AI is changing it's changing the way that companies hire, but also how job seekers apply for jobs, right? And so we even see it inside our career coaches community that people are trying, should I auto apply for our clients? Or then companies are using AI tools for it, right? And I think that the more technology is involved into it and you're able to increase not only the quality of the application, but even quantity of the application, or quantity and then quality. Like, I actually think that the interview becomes even more and more important as the true filter on whether the company hires you or not. And I think we're far away from the point of an AI doing the final hiring decision. I think even for most states, I think at this point, it's still there's compliance issues where a human still needs to do it. But by the time they change the law and stuff like that, it's not that the AI can't do it. I think that people still are going to want to have that human interaction, interviewing. And I think that the more a good resume becomes a commodity, because AI just becomes so good at writing resumes and extracting or even fabricating or creating illusions on your resume. I think that the storytelling or the interviewing becomes more important, and that the people who can communicate in stories better, I think they're the ones that are going to win. And I think what's interesting is that you've like stories. If there's one thing that hasn't changed through time, is the power of stories and the way that we used to remember things, and how we used to pass information through time. So I love that it's always been a big pillar for you, even before. Like I think we've known each other before a ChatGPT was like everybody used ChatGPT. And I've always remembered story was a big deal. It's always been a big pillar. It's always been a big focus of your journey. Yeah.
Story has to be.
Yeah.
Because to your point, Daniel, everything is about commoditization or differentiation. If everybody's resume can be run through Claude, and you throw in your resume, you throw in your stories, your accomplishments, not your stories necessarily, and you throw in your job description, and it all goes through the wash and spits out a bunch of bullets, there's no differentiation whatsoever between you and the next person. But when you get in front of a human, the ability to connect is always going to be valuable. I mean, I make the analogy, and I believe you do as well, between job seeking and dating, right? That analogy holds in so many ways. And if everybody can take the best possible picture and looks the same, then essentially the people who get the dates are going to be the ones who can tell better stories. They're going to be the ones who are more interesting. Now, obviously that doesn't hold where, some people have washboard abs and some people have kegs, but overall, the value of that story goes up the more the facts become commoditized.
Yeah. Yeah. What's interesting, you give the analogy of dating. I think about the sales funnel and how finding a job is a sales funnel. But I even think that's even true if you are a career coach listening to this, in the way that how you get clients, like how clients are interviewing you. And again, the better you could tell stories and the better you can communicate. And I even think proof over promises become even more important in this world where a lot of it can be fabricated. But we'll talk about the business side of it in a second.
Let me riff on that for half a second. Yeah. I actually had a prospective client who is now a client look me in the eye and say, "You just did it to me." And I said, "What?" He said, "The whole storytelling thing. You just told me a story about how you're going to teach me storytelling." And I was like, I suppose I did. He was very impressed.
Josh, I want to read another one from your clients, because it referenced something I actually heard you talk about in person. In fact, this is something that I still remember. You wanted to steal the statue from the Airbnb that we were at. So it says, Josh's unicorn concept helped me shift from trying to fit in everywhere to showing up where I am truly valued. I'm dearly grateful for Josh and career vision. So what is this unicorn concept you used to talk about? Is this the same thing that you have as Rhino? Did you change it to Rhino? What's the difference between unicorn? What's Rhino? Spill the tea, man.
Absolutely. I don't want to spill it. I'll get it all over my computer. But so I think everybody understands that the concept of the unicorn at a base level, just that hiring managers feel like they are hiring for perfection. And people don't really believe that perfection exists because unicorns don't exist, that whole thing.
Sorry to interrupt you, Josh.
No,
question. When you think about like the unicorn concept, is that the same thing as in the recruiter and agency world as the purple squirrel?
I've never heard of the purple squirrel. Is that like the thing that everybody wants but doesn't exist?
It's like if I am an agency recruiter and they say you're the hiring manager, and I go, okay, what would you like me to hire? And you give me a list of an impossible candidate to find, like a purple squirrel,
Got it.
kind of like a unicorn. Isn't it? I'm just trying to connect the dots for
Yeah.
the career coaches who come from an agency recruiting background.
Yeah, a little bit like that. My thought is, having not heard the purple squirrel analogy, that the purple squirrel is mostly somebody gave someone else a list of impossible requirements,
Yes.
and you've got to go and find the closest thing.
Yeah.
This is different. This is about
Okay.
risk mitigation.
Okay.
So the unicorn doesn't exist. We know that. But to the hiring manager, the ideal candidate looks a lot like the lowest possible risk that they can take in hiring. Because if you, as a hiring manager, are an at-will employee, and in the US and Canada you are, unless you're in, I think it's Montana, then your job is at risk no matter what. So if your job's at risk, you want to hire the person who will get up to speed quickly, who will produce quickly, and therefore mitigate your risk. So if you're trying to mitigate your risk, you're looking for the perfect candidate. That perfect candidate looks to you like a unicorn because you see things that you need. Maybe it's industry experience, maybe it's role experience, maybe it's level experience, maybe it's specific types of products that they've built. Whatever it is, you look at those things and your mind fills in the gaps, right? So maybe there's a horn, and maybe there's a tail, and maybe there's 4 legs. You see a horn, a tail, and 4 legs, and all of a sudden you think, unicorn. But again, unicorns don't exist. So what's the candidate to do if they're being asked to be something that they're not because they literally can't possibly be? Think about what they do have. So this is where the analogy, and I'm going to pull this out in honor of my daughter who printed this for me. Never give a 10-year-old a 3D printer, by the way. So horn.
Yep.
Tail.
Yep.
4 legs.
Yep.
Not a unicorn, right? But here's the thing. If you are a rhino, you have all the things they're looking for, and you know what they're looking for because of the job description. What you don't pitch them on is your armored hide, or the fact that if you get up to speed, your tail falls off. Whoops. Sorry about that. If you get up to speed, you can flip over a car with your horn, whatever the things are that make you unique. Those are less interesting. The hiring manager cares about the things that they need, the things that make you low risk. And so the rhino concept is you don't have to be a unicorn. You have to pitch yourself to the job. Pitch yourself as the unicorn.
I love that. I used to talk a lot about this in my career coaching days of every question. So like every company has limited resources. Time, like every single company. It doesn't matter if it's Google, the US government, or Opni, right? Or Career Vision in our sense, right? And because we have limited resources, everything every time we hire someone, we're making an investment. So if I'm hiring Josh for $100,000 a year, I can't go spend that on Google Ads. I can't go and buy a new vehicle to deliver my products. I can't go and buy more tokens for AI, right? Like I'm making a deliberate decision to saying this $100,000 is going to give me a better return on investment than any other investment that I can make for my company's goals. And if you think about investment, it's always the balance between the risk and the reward. Right. And I think what you're doing a really good job, like I think what the unicorn, like rhino example, and I think is so brilliant, is you're helping the clients communicate why they're low risk. I have all the pieces of the unicorn and high reward. And maybe I can even do extra things that you're not mentioning there because of my background as being stronger than the unicorn because of the rhino's strength. Right. And I think that's brilliant, man. I love it.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, everything comes down to low risk, and everything comes down to stories. And the right story is the story of how your experience as a candidate has led you to be low risk for this job, period.
Yeah. Low risk, but also that you're able to do the job. You were saying like low risk in a sense, but also they have to be able to do the job and be a positive.
That's low risk. Low risk is you've already done the job before, so you will get up to speed quickly. You won't need 6 months of on-ramp and training. You won't need to learn the new industry. think about it from the perspective of, let's pick Stripe, right? Stripe, fintech. The hiring manager's ideal candidate is somebody who comes from PayPal, has done the exact role at the exact level. They're not down leveling, so they're not a churn risk to go take a better job elsewhere. They're not up leveling, so they've already done the job. They are the exact right match because they've already done the job at that level at a company of similar size. All the things match. And for some ridiculous reason, they're willing to make a lateral move, maybe because they get 20K more.
That leads me to one of the things that you have on your LinkedIn. It's that, where was it in your LinkedIn? I thought I saw it. Maybe I'm going crazy. But like you, on average, help your clients make like $26,000 increase?
Total comp, yeah.
Total comp, right? Like in the scenario that you shared, similar industry, same role, lateral move, how is that pay increase possible? Well, I'm not going to make a guess because I'll probably get it wrong and I'll look silly. So I'll let you kind of tell me how is that's even possible. Because if I think about it, if I'm in a sales call with you and I'm thinking about hiring you and you're like, I'm going to get you a job in the same industry and the same thing, I'm going to low risk hire you. I want to make you the unicorn / rhino, and you're going to get a $26,000 pay. I would be like, BS.
Fair. So there are a couple of factors that go in, right? Base is only one of them. And when you're looking at if you're looking at the base as a factor that comes from what level you're already at, most of the people that I'm working with are at the 150 to 300 base range. So if you're in the 150 to 300 base range, the negotiation already starts at about 10K minimum in terms of your base ask, right? They offer you 160. You can get to 170, no question. The question is, can you get to 180? But then you've got bonus. Then you've got RSUs or other stock, right? I don't count stock options when it comes to dollars because they have no real value until they become actual stock.
Invested.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. But the value of the total package goes up very quickly, especially when you're talking about RSUs. So, I had one guy who was offered, I think it was 225 starting point. And so the first thing we did was established how much he's actually worth in the market. And turns out he's worth about 225 on the market. Great. So we can accept that. And whatever else we get is gravy. So we took that, we went back to them with a total comp ask because they were offering him 100K a year in stock. One of the great things about big public companies. And they came back, they offered him a sign-on bonus, they offered him $10K a year additional in stock, and they offered him 10K additional on the base. So you put all that together, and yeah, it's an outlier, but it's a lot of money and it helps the average.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think like for me, that's one of the biggest benefits of working with a career coach that has experience. And that's that if you are doing this by yourself and you get an offer, the likelihood of you accepting the first offer or even not negotiating because it's going to be super high because you're just at a point of desperation and you only see your point of view. Where a career coach will say, hey, this is good, but let's ask. And there's ways to ask without jeopardizing your offer. Like I've in my whole career coaching journey, I've only heard one person lose their offer after negotiating, and that's because they were complete jerks about how they did it.
That's exactly what I say.
Yeah, it's like complete. It's never because at that point, if you think through that, like by the time they've selected you, they've gone through all those. They've already spent probably $10,000 or more in getting you to this far in the interview with their time, like all of this fees. So it's going to cost them more to restart the process than it would be just to give you the 10K bump. So,
and they put money aside in their minds for what this person could reasonably ask for. If it's a reasonable ask and it's above that, they will go to bat for you because at that point, you're negotiating with the recruiter, but the recruiter is going straight to the hiring manager with any ask that needs to be negotiated. And the hiring manager wants you. They've already made their mind up. You're their person. So if that's the case, getting you an extra 5K, 10K, 15K, it's not that big a lift as long as you're actually not a jerk about it. And that's
Yeah.
exactly the right way to look at it.
It's also like, I remember, it's like, what's $10,000 to the hiring manager, the finance manager that might have to approve it, the HR manager that has to approve it, and to a billion-dollar company? Zero. It's like dropping a penny. What's that $10,000, $20,000 to you and your family? It's just big difference.
Vacation.
Right? Yeah, it's a huge difference, right? So Dave R said, part career coach, part therapist. Josh is very good at what he does. Josh's program is like a gym membership. You get what you put into it. One thing that really resonated me with that is a book that I've started I finished reading. It is now the book of the month for Opting, which is a book called High Output Management by Andy Grove. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Yeah. Intel, right?
Yeah, he was the CEO of Intel for a really long time. And one of my favorite parts about the book is that he talked about how the success of the manager is the total output of his team. And then he went to break down how there's two ways to increase the output of your team member. And that is, you can either increase the capability or you can increase the motivation. And that really got me into the rabbit hole, because I essentially was working with our client success team and saying, hey, we are like the managers to our career coaches, and we need to increase the output of their business. And there's two ways for us to increase the output. There is a capability of like, here's a strategy. And then there is the motivation, because we know that entrepreneurship, just like job searching, is a roller coaster. It's full of ups and downs, and it's a very emotional part of it. And when I read that quote or that recommendation or that testimonial, right, it reminded me of it just reminded me of that book. And it reminded me about like the best career coach. And I put you in that category. Like I mentioned it at the beginning, Josh,
Thank you.
they know when to put on hey, I'm a career strategist. Let's talk about tactical things to do. Like, this is how you find a person to network with. This is how you get ready for an interview. And then you have the career coach, which is the motivation, the mindset, passing the conviction. And you are world class at that. So I want you to just dive in, give us a little micro 5 to 10 minute masterclass on how to know when to switch hats or when to have both hats on. And how do you manage that with your clients?
Sure. So I'll come back to, it starts with empathy. I have yet to see a truly successful career coach who is an actual career coach, not someone who like is just great at marketing themselves as one. And I'm not going to name names, but they exist. But a truly successful career coach who lacks empathy. It's just not possible. So in order to understand your clients, in order to understand your people, you've got to be able to put yourself in their shoes and see what they're going through. So if I see somebody who is feeling down and it's because they got a rejection, even from something that they're really, really excited about, I can put on that, I'm really sorry, I know this meant a lot to you hat. I can speak to them in terms that make it clear that I have gone through what they've gone through. But I can also recognize that it's one opportunity and realize where they're at. And that's part of knowing, like if I had 200 clients, I'd have no idea where any individual was. I keep a reasonably small client load. I mean, reasonably small for the size of the company, because I want to know where everybody's at personally. So when I know that you were really into that opportunity and have zero in the pipeline because you were putting every minute into that one opportunity, I know that I'm going to give you a little bit of a swift kick in the rear because you've just let your pipeline dry out. Your language, right? On the other hand, if you've got 5 other opportunities, I know that I can say, hey, look, you've got this, 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 and that, because that's 5. I know that you're excited about this one, and I know why. Here's why you're excited. But look, this other one, number 3 in the pipeline, has most of that. Let's get excited about that one. So knowing what they've got in the pipeline is a big factor. Understanding who they are as a person and what motivates them is another one. So if somebody was excited about an opportunity, but it was on site and they've got a remote opportunity in the hopper, great. we can talk about how, well, that wasn't remote and this one is. So let's get excited about that. Ultimately, it's about knowing them as people and being able to kind of identify what they're going through and how you would go through it if you were them, so you can go through it with them. I want to say one more thing. So that quote from Dave is one of my absolute favorites because the personal trainer gym analogy is so true. And anybody who's been a coach for anything really, uh, fitness especially, but like anybody who's been a career coach for any amount of time will resonate with that particular analogy. But the other thing is, if you are going through the therapist portion of it, right? And we had recently in the Opni community, somebody really have a pretty significant incident. No, that's too strong, but occasion where somebody was sort of using them as a therapist. You are not a therapist. Unless you are a licensed therapist, you are not a therapist as a career coach. And it is not your job to help someone with a life crisis. So one of the biggest keys for me is knowing and being able to identify quickly whether somebody needs my help as a career coach or needs real therapeutic mental health help. And if they need the latter and are unwilling to get it, I'm not the coach for them. I'm not willing to become someone's therapist because I'm not qualified for it and I don't want to be it.
Yeah. I appreciate you mentioning that. I know that is a something that came up in our community, in our client community, and you kind of, it was a coach that was dealing with somebody about that, and you kind of like DM'd them, and I appreciate you giving your thought. I think it should, at that point, we're it's out of. I would do the same thing. Like for me, is like I would try to jump on a call with them if you have a scenario that way and say, hey, like we need to try to get you some help and walk them through why it's okay. But anyways, Josh, so we talked about story, empathy, all of that. That's the craft. I want to now pivot to the business side of career vision. And one thing that most career coaches and solo operators think is that they need to do everything in their business. And one thing that I remember that we did when we started working together, it's a couple of years ago, is that from day one, you understood that there's high level activities that only Josh Bob can do. And then there's activities that can be delegated to either somebody in your team or outsource it to somebody else. And I remember that instance of you saying, okay, there's a lot of administrative lower value, let's say a VA type of style work that needs to be done. You could either do it yourself, which I would say 90+% of coaches do it. That's what they do the first couple of years of their business. Or you can go and even as you get your business some traction a couple of years ago, go do some part-time coaching for somebody else and say, okay, if I need to work this many hours to pay for my full-time employee, and you do that, walk through that with us, how you're able to buy back your time in a sense and allow you to focus on more high-level activities.
Yeah. So first of all, buy back your time. Perfect. I have that book. Do you know why I have that book? Because you gave me that book. I'd already read it from the library and now I can reference it anytime because it's right behind the screen over there.
Yeah.
Yep. So thank you. I think you might recall that while Opni helps people sort of decide when the right time to get a VA is, I was probably the first person you'd ever coached in Opni who got a VA roughly the same time they joined Opni.
It was like a combined thing, or like, hey, we're going to do this at the same time. Like we built the whole program or the onboarding, everything was around knowing that we're going to delegate things out. And we were like, okay, this is Josh. This is the VA. This is Josh. Like we built everything out with that. Yes. And that's what I'm saying. Like that was you were the first person who just didn't need to go do this stuff. You're just like, I'm just going to get a VA from the beginning. Like you're telling me all this needs to happen. Let's just get a VA. And that's what I'm trying to I think you had the foresight before but like other people have done it now, but you set that tone of a possibility and of why it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And here's what I was able to do. One, I was already coaching 20, 30 hours a week for another organization when I started full-time on my own organization. So that allowed me the income to afford having a VA. That was a plus. I was fortunate to have that. Not everybody does, but it also helped me learn the ropes.
Mm-hmm.
The thing about buying back my time, I think I counted, my father-in-law loves to quiz me on my business every time we talk. And he lives 15 minutes away. So it's like 3 times a week. But every time he's like, all right, how many people do you have working for you now? I'm like, all right, well, it's like 9. It's like 9 people. What do they all do? So then I go through what they all do. And he's like, why? And I said, because if I didn't have this person, I would have to go on LinkedIn and spend 3 hours a day engaging with DMs. And if I didn't have this person, I would have to do resumes for an hour a day. And if I didn't have this person, and I add it all up for him, and he's like, okay, so you'd need 62 hours a day. Yep. Okay. And how much do you pay for all that? And I tell him, and he's like, so you're paying a functional equivalent of like $12 an hour for all of those things, basically to get 62 hours a day of work. Yes. Okay, I get it now. And we still go through that, every freaking like 3 days, but even still. So the idea for me is always going to be, if I want to do it, fine. I still mow my own lawn because I enjoy it. I have 3 kids. Having time with my headphones on and them not calling me is actually a good thing sometimes. But like, if it's not interesting work, if it's not incredibly high leverage that requires my specific skill set, storytelling and coaching and empathy and all of those things, why not outsource it if the input is more valuable than the output?
You say it so well. I'm a big fan of that concept.
You taught me that concept.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think, yeah, I had kind of been thinking through that. I outsource everything I could possibly can. And every year I redo my buyback rate as I continue to make and grow my business and grow my investments and grow that. And I continue to expand on what I now outsource everything that I can, pretty much, right? But I think that's a really big limiting belief that a career coach needs to break through. I wish that more coaches, especially the ones who are working full time, would do. Like, if I am working full time and I have because a lot of our clients who are thinking of becoming a career coach that are working full time, they have great jobs. Like, these are like, you're not going to be a career coach by only having 2 years of experience or having an internship at Google, right? These are people who have 15, 20, 30 years of corporate experience, are probably, directors, VPs level people. I think that the average coach probably coming in probably is making at least 150. And then they get bogged down because they're too afraid to invest in hiring a lead gen person or like a ghostwriter or to do resume. Everything could essentially be delegated, and you should build a business around the things that you enjoy doing. It's like, I love podcasting. Could I get somebody else to host this? Yes, but why? Like, I like doing this. And so I think that's a concept. I think you've done such a great job, and I've seen how that has evolved, not only just in the first VA that you hire, but even think through other parts, like you just mentioned, right? Like even like resume writers. Like, I was listening to a podcast episode. It's like division of labor, right? Like, I think about the unicorn concept very differently. I think about a career coach. When you build a business and you are the founder and operator, the face of it, you run everything, like, you are this unicorn, and it's going to be impossible for you to find somebody to replace you. Like, if you get hit by a bus, there goes the business essentially, right? And so you can't find another unicorn, like you mentioned earlier, but you could find unicorn parts. So in this scenario, as a business owner,
Getting dark
right?
real fast.
What?
This is getting dark real fast.
You could find unicorn parts. Like, as a business owner, I might not be able to find a unicorn, but I could find the horse. And then I can go get a rhino that has the horn. And I can go get, like if we're talking about Pegasus now, we can go get the eagle that has wings, right? And the idea is, if we do this correctly, we're able to find people that are better at that thing. So I can have somebody who's better than me on marketing, somebody that's better than me on sales, somebody that's better than me on resume writing, somebody that's better than me at interview prep, somebody that's better than me at finance and accounting and legal and all of those things. And combine, they would make me better because they're better at their own craft. And as a like operator, CEO, title, whatever you want to call yourself, your job is not to be more of a generalist and a specialist, because it would be impossible for you to get better at that. And so, sorry, I went on my tangent there,
Oh, that's
but I
great.
think that is it's a limiting belief that needs to be broken a lot. And because it's so scary to maybe hire someone when your business is not there right at that moment. And I get it, but I think it's a lot less riskier than you doing it. It's like you starting your career coaching business and 6 months from now, you're still stuck and can't find clients. And then you give up and then you kind of give up on your dream and you go back and you feel like you can't get out of that hole of corporate and umbrella. And I think that if you were to allocate, because VAs are not even that expensive in the grand scheme. Like if you're making 150, this is actually it's worth the investment. It's definitely worth the investment.
I'll say the biggest deciding factor for me when you and I were first talking about whether I'd bring on a lead gen VA or not wasn't the VA. It wasn't even the time necessarily. It was what the VA was going to do. It was lead gen. Not because I didn't want to do lead gen. I was already doing it, but because it meant top line growth, right? Later on, I brought in a resume writer. I brought in a CSM. I brought in the people who were more cost centers, who helped me get to a faster outcome or a better outcome.
Mm-hmm.
But at first, I was focused on buying back my time by bringing in somebody who could help me grow the business faster. And if that's what it takes to help you get over the hump, then by all means, look at it that way and first grow, then worry about delivery.
I think you're so spot on there. I think that the path of lead assistant when going from a solopreneur to start maybe even thinking about the team is that the easiest role to quantify that investment is lead gen or appointment setting, and then a salesperson. The problem on the sales side of bringing in a closer is that there's a whole industry on high ticket closing, and they'll work for a 10% commission, but it's very difficult to get one and keep one if you don't have at least 15 to 20 sales calls a week. And so until your marketing funnel is built out, it's harder to delegate sales. But appointment setting is something that can delegate it. And then if you have a really good appointment setter, then that can then help you get towards the finding the salesperson as a second stage, as a second part of it. One more question for you, Josh. What is a belief about running a coaching business that you've held when you started that you have completely reversed since?
I mean, number one, you've heard me say it repeatedly. I suck at sales. I no longer think I suck at sales. I think I don't like sales as much.
Fine, fair.
I said the first time we met and probably every day since then, I suck at sales. It is absolutely possible to be a great salesperson who thinks they stink at sales by following the right path and following the right patterns. It is very difficult to grow a business if you stink at sales. So get better. And you and I have had probably 3 or 4 reset calls on my sales stuff with me coming to you and be like, Daniel, help me. I stink at sales. And you're like, okay, let me see some sales calls. Let's talk it through. And by the time I come out of like an hour with you, you're like, okay, this, and this. And my next 5 calls I close.
Yeah. I think about sales as the interview, right? It's like you could do the job. Like like I mentioned, you're a great coach, but unfortunately that doesn't matter if we can't get them to become your clients, right? And so it's like you could do the job, I could do the job, but I flop at the interview. It's like you just have to get good at interviewing, unfortunately. And if you're good at interviewing and you're good at doing the job, then you're gonna have a really great career. But we see it all the time of great candidates who are just underemployed solely because they can't communicate well on the interview, and therefore they're taking jobs and they're getting paid a lot less than they would if they were just able to improve that. And same thing with sales, right? There's a level of practicing that you can do, and there's the right script and objection handling, but also I would say it's conviction. And so, like if you're watching this, and I think Josh, I think the reason why I would say it's easier for me when to work with you on sales, and we can kind of go do a couple of tweaks here and there, and then you can go and close really. It's because a lot of it is just me reminding you that you are such a good coach that you're doing them a disservice if they don't work with you. Like, and so it's just more of like passing the conviction, which kind of wraps the idea of like why I think if you're a job seeker, hiring a coach makes sense. And if you're a career coach, hiring a business coach also makes it. It's like, it is the same thing. It's like you need someone that has a bird's eye view about your process and can help you understand your blind spots, but also the motivation hat on when you are lacking that conviction, when you've had 10 sales calls and none of them close and you're like, my business is going to shit. I might have to go back to corporate. I think life is sucks. And you're like, dude, did you remember like what you did like 3 months ago? Or do you remember like the client that you just helped change their life forever? And it's like those mental shifts that matter a lot. So Josh, thank you so much again. Before we wrap up, if somebody wants to learn more about you, connect with you, tell us a little bit more where they can find you, connect with you.
Sure. Yeah. I'd love to connect with anybody out there. You can find me on LinkedIn at /in/JoshBob, JoshBob. I'll put in, if it's all right, I'll put in a small product plug. My wife did make this mug. She is a potter. LuluStudios.com, BLUELOU studios.com. I'm going to make her listen to this just for that plug.
Yeah.
And I love connecting with people. If you've got questions, I've got answers. Whether or not I make them up is for you to determine.
Josh, thanks so much. If you're listening to this podcast, if you found one piece of value, then all I ask in return of you, please leave us a review. If you're watching this on YouTube, just hit a like, subscribe. If you're watching this on the podcast, like Apple Podcasts or a Spotify, 5-star review. And shameless plug, if you are a career coach and you're looking to take your business to the next level, shoot me a DM or and we can set up a time to talk. Thank you so much. And oh, look at that, Josh, with the fireworks. It's the way to end it. Let's go.
Thank you,
everyone. Catch you guys on the next episode. Bye, everyone.